Good morning, everyone. So today I will be talking about my project, Reconstructing Our Curriculum Protest Song as Pedagogy in an after-school program. And big thank you to my advisor, Dr. Vu. So let's get started. So the Educational Equity Index is a measure of segregation in schools, and a score of 1 indicates the most segregated. A score of 100 indicates the most integrated. In 2016, Boston scored a 28.4 on this index, indicating a, quote, massive achievement gap, and meaning that Black and Brown children in the city are often fairly severely racially isolated in school, which we can also see in this map taken from the Boston Area Research Initiative. And racial segregation in schools can obviously be devastating for students for a number of reasons due to the concentration of resources in majority white schools. And one of the crucial aspects of education that Black and Brown children, specifically in Boston, often lose out on is consistent opportunities to engage with the arts in school, and specifically music. So 2 years ago, with some of my friends and colleagues in the College of Fine Arts, I started an after-school music program called BAM, Boston After School Music, that works with children in BPS schools that don't provide music during the school day. And so while I'm really proud of the work that we've done so far, if we're not more critical of our pedagogy, we risk participating in attempts to kind of civilize, quote, at-risk youth into a white and middle-class norm of music making through a Western and European repertoire and canon of music that's practiced in the kind of mainstream ways that music education works in our schools. And so my project was to develop both a theoretical manifesto and a curriculum that can be implemented in the after-school program to make sure that our lessons are more relevant and more liberating for our students. So today I will be discussing both the theoretical grounding of this in the manifesto, and also giving an overview of the curriculum and pedagogy. So diving into some of the theoretical basis for the curriculum, I'm drawing from the seminal educational theories of Bell Hooks, Gloria Ladson-Billings, Bettina Love, and Paulo Freire. So we kind of see this like pyramid almost. So in order to reach the kind of loftier goals of abolitionist teaching and teaching to cultivate socio-political consciousness, or conscienzato, the classroom must first become a loving home place, and then the 3 components of culturally relevant pedagogy as theorized by Ladson-Billings can help us bridge the gap to develop an abolitionist framework for teaching our students. So let's dive into home place. To become a place where students' agency can be really nourished, we practice creating a home place in the classroom through joy and love. This was a concept that was first theorized by Bell Hooks as a community that's typically led by women, in which Black dignity is nurtured and honored. And Bettina Love further takes this and says that art in educational spaces is often a home place for many of our Black and Brown students, as it can be a creative space and a space of creative resistance to power structures. So home place is crucial to what we do in our classroom. And once this is established, we can kind of dive into practicing a culturally relevant pedagogy, which is like really widely cited now. And there are 3 components to this theory as created by Ladson-Billings. First, setting high expectations for students and also providing the support that they need to meet those expectations is an act of love, right? We want to make sure that we're setting a high bar and also providing those supports so that students know that we expect a lot from them and we believe that they're capable. The second and kind of most like salient part of this is cultural competence, which cultivates both students' cultural self-knowledge and kind of the empathy for the lived experiences of others. Gloria Ladson-Billings says that cultural competence can be a vehicle for learning. And I think that in the music classroom, we can take this a step further and say cultural competence is actually the learning itself. Music is inherently a cultural good. All music is like deeply rooted in culture. So, and then once we can learn to competently understand the culture of another person, this helps us to cultivate the 3rd component of Ladson-Billings theory, which is socio-political consciousness, which she takes actually from Paulo Freire. So that brings us to our next kind of pinnacle of the theory behind what we want to achieve in our classroom. Freire argues that the purpose of practicing democracy and gaining socio-political consciousness in an educational setting is to allow an oppressed group to transform structures of power. And then Bettina Love then takes this one step further, kind of in the theorization of abolitionist teaching, which says we should use that not only to transform structures of power, but educate with the abolition of oppressive structures of power in mind, which can take form in many ways, but that's kind of the end goal of what we want to achieve in allowing students to develop their critical thinking skills. So with all of this in mind, I kind of realized that an effective way to practice all of these in a music classroom would be to develop a protest music curriculum. And then this brings us to Barber's 4 characteristics of public talk. And we can see that a protest music curriculum, if taught effectively, can kind of fulfill all of these 4 characteristics that he identifies to being crucial for the creation of a strong democracy in which all citizens have a say in the structures that govern them. So if we kind of go down this list, we can see that creating music, and especially creating protest music, but kind of any musical activity in general, involves both creating the music and listening in that period of silence and kind of give and take. So that fulfills the first one. Music obviously appeals to our affective senses and our kind of ideas of beauty and aesthetic. Protest song intends action. As a result, that's a crucial characteristic of it. And music making is inherently participatory. We want all of our experiences with our students to be them actively making music as well. So to dive into the actual creation of the protest song curriculum, my goal was to make it flexible and adaptable so that students and teachers and community members can pick and choose which elements are worthwhile and which they can leave behind. So the document itself contains an outline that can be loosely followed, specific detailed lesson plans that can be taught exactly how they are, and other toolkits such as playlists, instructional materials, repertoire ideas, and a lesson plan template for teachers to fill in themselves. So diving into the curriculum outline, these are 2 weeks kind of from the end of the curriculum in which students are moving towards creating their own class-written protest song that they've voted on a topic for and kind of discussed the demands that they would have. So we can see that each week also has a theme in it that's taken from the manifesto, which is also included in the curriculum document, so that each lesson in each week is really, teachers are like pouring the intentionality of the theory into everything that's happening. So there's no separation between the theory and what's actually happening in the practice in the classroom. We can look at a lesson plan from early in the unit in the semester. Week 1, students are developing the crucial musical skills that will help them build those songwriting skills, because remember, this is a context where maybe this is their first ever formal music class. So building rhythm, pitch competence, and then building some of the other very crucial skills like lyric writing or understanding a musical form, or improvisation that would also be key to having them create their own song. So this is kind of an idea of what they would be doing early on. And we see that there's some modifications and ideas for different age groups on this side panel. This is a lesson plan from week 10, a little bit later, in which students are moving into that songwriting process. They maybe have voted on their topic, created some lyrics. This is a point where they're creating a melody and then choosing chord progressions and kind of, deciding on their own aesthetic sensibilities and musical sensibilities, while also practicing kind of the democratic act of, okay, we have to come to a group consensus here. And also discussing the meaning behind musical choices. So there's a very wide progression between, just building those basics of musical skills and then utilizing them. This is an example of one of the additional resources that we have in the curriculum book. It's a listening library intended for movement activities, which also has a very wide repertoire of songs and genres and artists. And then I just want to wrap up by saying that during my student teaching this semester, I actually had the opportunity to test a few of these lessons with a 6th grade general music class in Concord. And so while this is a different age group and a different demographic from the students of BAM, there's a lot of privilege in Concord generally, which is important because these students also have to do this work and kind of come to terms with the process of identifying issues in the community. It was very enlightening to see these processes play out with a group of real children, and we discussed and voted on a range of issues they were interested in writing about. And many of them posed really difficult questions and had strong opinions. And so kind of with that experience in mind and kind of seeing how this plays out with a real group of kids, I'm really excited to see how this could work for the students of BAM and how this can make our classes more relevant to them and more liberating for them. Thank you. I can take any questions now.